but the community to which he or she was linked continues. The embracing of death by Khalistani guerrillas is often conceptualized as an expression both of witness and of love. Sucker and Jinder said in their farewell address that they imagined the hangman's rope as the embrace of a lover, longed for death as for the marital bed, and hoped that their dripping blood, the outcome of this union, would fertilize the fields of Khalistan. Death in struggle is defined here not only as a feature of courage but as a feature above all of generosity, of selflessness, of love. Hence descriptions of martyred men and women as kind, soft, and gentle. He was a good listener, said one person about Man Singh Shaharu, founder of the Khalistan Commando Force, and the immediate repudiation of leaders who, however bold, acquire the reputation of being greedy, inflated, or selfish. We are tiny particles of dust of the numberless heroic jewels of the Sikh nation, wrote Sucker and Jinder. And Bhindran Whale's wish was to have his ashes scattered at the gate of the Golden Temple complex so that they would be touched by the loving feet of pilgrims. Sucker and Jinder also expounded poetically on their love not only for people but for the entire universe in their famous farewell letter. We are not touched even a bit by hatred for the people of India, they wrote. Not only to embrace our people, we are restless to embrace all of the earth and sky. We intoxicatingly remember the entire cosmos and worship the life that vibrates in it. One man I interviewed had just gotten out of India a month before I met him, and in the intervening time his wife and infant son had been arrested. Police apparently tied the child to a block of ice in order to make this militant's wife tell them where he was. Rather than succumbing to the temptation to try to spare her child, she asked for a glass of water, and when it arrived, she smashed it on the desktop and slit her throat with the ragged edge. She died on the spot. Aside from the inherent horror of this story, with its image of a both bold and gruesome death, is the significant commentary of the husband. She was so full of love, she the martyred, he said. He was clearly desperately saddened as well as fiercely proud as he told this story. Risham Kaur, she was a real Sikh, somebody else in the room murmured as both the husband and I were momentarily overcome with emotion. What happened to the infant? I managed to ask. But Risham Kaur's husband had gotten up to compose himself in another room. Sikh women have always had the right to participate fully in war activities, but in fact they have been more noticeably prominent in support roles than in actual combat. These include the usual sheltering of militants, cooking for militants, sewing clothes for militants, and performing other domestic tasks. The role most lauded in Sikh tradition is of the woman who, through her own stance of courage and determination, prods the men around her to militancy. Mai Bago, a woman who refused to let 40 Sikh soldiers retreat from a battle, is the historical model here. The Sikh tradition of the Khalsa siblinghood forms a ready context for the same desexualization of female Khalistani militants. All women other than one's wife are to be treated as mothers, sisters and daughters, Khalsa Sikhs assert. All human rights reports emanating from Punjab point out the prevalence of rape and other sexual atrocities as methods of torture and punishment. The terroristic aspect of sexual crime as a war tool in Punjab is made clear by the many episodes in which such crimes were staged in public arenas. When female sexual honor is seen as something to be protected as a matter of national honor, insults to it will be used as a tool of war, as we have all seen horrifically in Bosnia. But the linking of traditional understandings of sexuality, women's status, and sexual war crimes is not one that is made by many Sikhs. Since Sikhs believe that all men and women of the Pantha brothers and sisters, insults of a sexual nature are taken both in a very personal way, as insults to one's family, and in a very political way as attacks on one's nation. One interesting effect of Khalistani militancy related to the sexual honor question is in the marriage market, when our sisters and daughters of freedom fighters have a new avenue through which to acquire spouses. For a man, Marrying a girl from a militant family who may have lost her sources of support to martyrdom or who may need protection from police harassment is yet another way of serving the nation. The dramatic martyrdom of Resham Kaur, who slit her throat with a glass so that she might not reveal her husband's whereabouts under threat of her infant's torture, is another prime example of wifely support. A female martyr, Gannam Kaur, is venerated in the most flowery terms. Gannam Kaur was a great heroine of the Khalistan struggle. Her husband Mokham Singh of the Babar Khausar had absconded, and Gannam Kaur was arrested by the police. She herself had also been of great service in the movement, providing food to the fighters and carrying weapons from place to place. She was really a brave lady, and our hearts went out to her when we learned that she was in custody. Anyway, after torturing Gannam Kaur continuously for 45 days, the police finally killed her. She had 2 children, whose whereabouts remained unknown. And her body was never released, so nobody knows exactly what was done to her. Many of the actions of the Babar Khausar over the years would not have been possible without Gannam Kaur. She talked very little, and most of her time was spent in prayer. But when she was needed for some action, she was always ready. As long as the stars are in the sky, the heroic deeds of Gannam Kaur will not be forgotten by the Sikh nation. When Khalistan is liberated, those people who are responsible for perpetrating such heinous crimes against women will be punished. We look forward to that. Despite the many occasions in which Sikh militants saved one another's lives, they typically talk about these episodes without the heightened sense of drama such stories would usually provoke in the Western military tradition. Rather, they are recounted in quite matter-of-fact tones. The friends who let X stay behind were in love with him, a commonly used phrase to describe comradely bonds, but felt more strongly their common commitment to the cause than their selfish attachment to him as an individual. Their efforts on behalf of their broader love for Guru, for Sikhi, was what was being narrated, not their narrower love for X as a friend. Life as a game of love means life unafraid of death, for oneself or for others. One Sikh, defending the notion that even militant Khalistanis can be good guests and citizens of the Western countries in which many now live, said, "We will obey every law of every country outside of India. But in India, we will break every law." Where breaking the laws of a perceived unlawful power is seen as a revolutionary act, criminality itself becomes militancy. The boundary between crime and political action blurs, because every flaunting of the law is experienced as an assertion of sovereignty. I suggest that this conscious refusal to play the game of the oppressor, the decision to start a new game of one's own, with one's own rules and not India's, is what is responsible for the failure of militant Sikhs to condemn rather obvious atrocities committed by other militants. The militants think that what they've got is a war, with both sides ready to sacrifice. But the Indian government thinks it's got a crime problem, in which deaths on one side are acceptable but deaths on the other atrocious. Since it is usually governments, not insurgents, that have money, power, and propaganda at their disposal, most of the world thinks of the Punjab problem in the latter terms. The reason why I say here that this is tragic, is not on the merits to the Khalistani Sikh cause or the demerits of the case for viewing Sikh militancy as a version of crime.